She is now currently in private practice. And the clinical director of the Paul Robeson School. A very pivotal person in the whole area of the black mind. As I mentioned last night, she was virtually fired from Howard University for thinking independently, which is not unusual. But she has done, serious research on this whole question of AIDS. We had her at we run a holistic retreat every year over the Memorial holiday. Other people celebrate Memorial Day. A large group of Africans in this country are celebrating our slavery. And we run a retreat each year. For the last 2 years, we've had Dr. Welsing come up and spend some time with us. It's a 3-day retreat. I'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. But she has been a person that has essentially galvanized a lot of people around this country, began to rethink a lot of things. As mentioned last night, we're trying to encourage her to finish this book, The ISIS Case. I found you editor, Carol Parks. Look how cute. I don't even edit it, that's the problem. I want you all to give a warm welcome to our dear Dr. Francis Welsing.
Thank you very much, Hakeem. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to...
Can't hear too well.
Can't hear.
It's on, yeah. Can we turn it up? That's it, try it.
Well, let me say that I'm very glad to be home. Can you hear?
Only if you hold it right in front.
Well, I'm very glad to...
Help me put these on the stage. Just help me put these on the stage. Let's try it.
All right, well, I will try to do my best to talk up a little bit.
Hold on, speak.
I'm glad to be home and to see my family. I have a mother here and a younger sister and a nephew and an adopted nephew, Psychiatry. I would like to share on this very important occasion of the 20th anniversary of Third World Press. I would like to share with this audience some of my thinking and to share some conclusions about where we are at this point in time in this area of the world and throughout the world. I would like to begin by maybe making these remarks a memorial tribute to Mayor Harold Washington.
All right.
That I was shocked to hear of his death in Washington. And I was shocked at how shocked I was, if you understand what I'm saying. That I walked around in a state of shock, and it's still very hard for me to think that he is no longer with us. And as I drove around Chicago from Midway Airport to home and to my sister's house and driving up and down the streets, I kept saying, "Oh, wow, the streets are cleaner." And it seemed as though there was another vibration in this city where I was born. And I think Harold Washington had a very profound impact. And I like to look at events that we consider to be tragic and say, what kind of lesson is to be learned from something that, we feel is pain? And I believe that there are some very important lessons that we can gain from Mayor Harold Washington. And I think that his passing may be a test for black people in the city of Chicago. And the question is whether or not the people in Chicago, the black people, rise to the occasion to show Harold Washington that he is still here. But we can talk about that further. I think that the thing that we must do as black people is to begin to have a very clear context in which we do our thinking. That events never occur in the abstract. They are always occurring in particular patterns, and they are occurring in relationship to other things. And when I talk to black people across this country, and I've recently come back from England and talked to black people there, and I say that there's a clue to what ails us to some extent, and it's how we greet each other. Many of us greet each other by saying, "What's happening? Hey, what's happening?" And I say that's because we don't really understand what is going on. That when we really understand what is going on, we will be able to say, like some other people, "How do you do?" But we are constantly saying, "What's happening?" Now I would like to share my idea about what is happening and the context in which I do my thinking and in which I understand world events. And that goes to the issue of white supremacy. We've used the word racism for a long time, or we've used the word discrimination, but I am using the phrase white supremacy and in parenthesis racism, or the other way around, racism and in parenthesis white supremacy, but the emphasis being on white supremacy. And I say that this is the thing that we must understand, that we are not going to be able to understand black male-female relations. We are not going to be able to understand teenage pregnancy. We are not going to be able to understand drug addiction. We are not going to be able to really understand the tendency to have trash build up around us in the places where we live unless we come to grips with white supremacy.
Right on.
What is this white supremacy? And I want everybody to take out a little piece of paper and get a pencil and write this name and write this telephone number down. The name is Neely Fuller, N-E-E-L-Y, Fuller, F-U-L-L-E-R, and his phone number is area code 202-484-5461. This gentleman is the author of a book called The Textbook for Victims of Racism or White Supremacy. I would recommend, this book costs about $25, 25 or 30. I consider it to be a very, very important book. I worked with this gentleman 17 years to get his book published. He is a guard at the Bureau of Engraving in the District of Columbia. This gentleman said back in 1956 that he thought that racism was about people who classify themselves as white, maintaining control and domination over the people that they classified as non-white. And when I heard him say this around 1967, a light bulb turned on in my head. It just clicked. That's it. Prior to that time, I considered myself to be a Marxist, and I was looking at racism as a byproduct of economic activity. But as I attempted to use Marx's definition, it wasn't producing the answers that I needed. And at that point in time, I was training to become a psychiatrist, and I wanted to have some answers so that I could help black people solve their mental health problems. But as I attempted to use Marx's concept, I wasn't really getting the traction that I needed to solve these problems as a physician. And so I heard this gentleman one day start talking about a book he had been working on, and he said, no, that you have a system of white supremacy, and that is about people who classify themselves as white being in control and domination. Well, I'll talk on this one. Okay? Is that better? No, that's an echo. Can that be turned down a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. So Fuller said that this system, that white supremacy was a system, and that, listen to this, that this system functioned in the area of economics. This system functioned in the area of education. This system functioned in the area of entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Are you all with me? Yeah. Do you see the difference? Marx was saying that this was causing this. And Fuller said, no, we have a global system of white supremacy that carries out activity in economics, education, entertainment, labor law, politics, meaning all the areas of people activity. So then Cress Welsing comes along and she said, why? Why indeed would these people set up such a system? And the question why is a very important question in psychiatric medicine. The question why is a very important question for the brain-computer period, and that's why anybody who knows a little 2-year-old or 18-month-old, or, you know, probably 2, and they keep saying, why? Why, mommy? Why? Because this is the question that turns the brain-computer on. It is a question about cause and effect. You see? What is happening so that the brain can say, oh, okay, I've got it now. Now I can understand, and I can move from there to understand many other things. So I said, why would these people do this? And then my education, starting at Douglas Elementary School, Wendell Phillips High School, Antioch College, Howard Medical School, okay, classmates or whatever, that all of this came together once I raised this question, because this question just said, brain-computer, go to work on this problem. And so I was standing in my kitchen, as a matter of fact, doing dishes or cooking, and the brain-computer came with the printout. And the printout was this, that here we are on this planet Earth, 1/10 of the people have white skin. 9/10 of the people are black, brown, red, and yellow. One of the things that the 1/10 would say is that the 9/10, particularly the black people, were genetically inferior. How many people have heard that? Everybody. So I also understood in training as a psychiatrist, when somebody is pointing, something's wrong with you. something is wrong with you. Something is wrong with you. Something is wrong with you that the behavioral scientist knows that the finger that is pointing at somebody else has 3 fingers that are pointing at them.
That's right.
And so I also thought about that and I said, oh, wow. These people are telling us that we are genetically inferior, but the same people are genetic recessive.
Yeah.
Do you see? And even if you have not studied formal genetics, everybody in this room, every black person is a scholar in genetics. Because all black people know, don't marry anybody darker than yourself. You see, that's genetic knowledge under white supremacy, because black people didn't like their color and were trying to get away from this very powerful and dominant color. But the people who were classified as white learned after they had circumnavigated the globe, and everywhere the people were colored, and those white men who had sexual intercourse with the black women and waited around 9 months, they found out that white plus black is equal to colored. White plus brown is equal to color. White plus red is equal to color. And white plus yellow is equal to color. So they understood after that voyage, after those many voyages, that these people, the black, brown, red, and yellow people, were the majority people on the planet. And that they were genetically dominant to white-skinned people. And they also made a quick brain-computer calculation that if they did not maintain control and domination over the black, brown, red, and yellow people, that white people could disappear on the planet. Now, black people, and this is what I wrote about in this paper, the Crest Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism, that was first discussed in 1970. That's 17 years ago. I was a baby. I'm kidding, okay. But I needed to understand, what is going on to begin to make sense of this experience that we have. And being a physician, see, a lot of times some of the other disciplines, they can have a whole lot of ideas, but they are not required to get people well. But when you are required to get people well, and you make your living based on your ability to get people well, there's another dimension. It's not just talking for fun and games. It's a question of, I've got to understand this, because when somebody comes in my office and says, Dr. Welsing, help me with this, I've got to understand enough to be able to help them. And since I was trained as a black psychiatrist, that black people didn't have the intelligence to talk about their problems, check it, and that the best treatment for them was drugs, and I said, no way, that I was going to understand what the problems were that black people faced so that I could share that understanding with them and help them solve the problems in their lives. So that my having to understand this, but once I understood it, I said, oh, okay. Now I understand. The discussions that were going on before, talking about black male-female relations, you've got to understand that those problems are tied to the system of white supremacy. And they are tied in a particular way. And they are tied in this way. Where's my eraser? Oh, here's the eraser. That if the problem that the people who classify themselves as white, if the problem that they face is white supremacy for the purpose of white genetic survival. Are you with me?
Right.
So this is the key. This tiny group of people, this tiny minority of people on the planet, are trying to survive genetically. And so their thing, a lot of people say, oh no, their thing is money. They make money. They don't make melanin. See, they manufacture money. But God makes melanin. Now, they didn't have it, and so their struggle is to survive genetically. Now, black men and black women, we are all equal people. We are not the same. Women are not the same as men, and men are not the same as women. The critical issue of white genetic survival is related when it comes to black, brown, red, and yellow people, is that black, brown, red, and yellow women cannot cause white genetic annihilation. See how quiet it is? The women are offended. No. Women cannot force men to have sexual intercourse. Is that true?
Yes.
See, you can entice. Nice perfume, nice clothes, nice words. Entice. But if you try to force a man to have sexual intercourse, you're going to whip out your M16 rifle and say, you better come on. And if you frighten him, what's going to happen? See, now these are basic facts of physiology. It doesn't require anybody to make this up. This is basic physiology, so that women cannot force sexual intercourse. Men, white, black, brown, red, and yellow, can impose sexual intercourse. See, I'm not talking about rapists, but I'm talking about they can impose sexual intercourse. So that the critical issue of white genetic survival comes down and attacks males differentially than it does females. You see, in other words, a white male can decide, now I want to make some lighter colored black people. So I'm going to have sex with a black woman. That's his decision. The woman cannot, the black female, the non-white female cannot impose that decision on any white male or any non-white male. But males can impose this decision. And so because of all of the levels of color, black, brown, red, and yellow, black is the highest level of melanin pigmentation. Brown, red, and yellow, these are lesser levels of the same pigment. So that the white people understood, the white collective understood, if we are to survive genetically, we must impose control on men, and we impose it directly in proportion to the amount of pigment that you can produce. So that growing up on the south side of Chicago, you learn, if you are black, get back. If you are brown, stick around. If you are yellow, you're mellow. If you're white, you're right. Now, I was just in London, and I went through this, and all the people who, from Africa and the Caribbean just went right through. They know it, too. All of the non-white people all over the world, Asia, Africa, the islands of the South Seas, wherever, where there has been confrontation with white, everybody knows how the colors stack up relative to threat to white genetic survival, although people never understood that the reason that the colors had to be put down in such a way was related to white fear of white genetic annihilation. So because of that problem, imposing major stress. Now there's stress on all of us, males and females alike. But there is horrendous stress on the men because the men present the threat to white genetic survival. Right here in this city, long time ago, 3149 Elvis. But my parents and my grandmother were in our dining room, and they were talking about somebody had been lynched. I was a little girl, very little. They were talking about somebody had been lynched. And they were kind of talking in hushed tones, and I remember asking my grandmother, "Granny, why did they do that?" My grandmother said, "Well, because some people have to act ugly." Now, lynching and castration means what? To kill and to attack the genitals of the black man. See, I always wondered, well, what is that all about? See, black men may do many things. You've never heard tell in history of a black man attacking a white man's genitals. It's no history. It's no history of people of color attacking white people's genitals. But there is global history of people who classify themselves as white attacking the genitals of non-white men. So you say, why? Because the brain computer wants to understand in depth so that it can move with greater power. So we say why, and we end up with this. Here's the black man's genitals. Attack this and destroy this. Why? Because in the testicles is what? The genetic material. And the genetic material that can cause white annihilation. Do you understand? Doesn't it make sense?
Absolutely.
Makes sense to me. Now beyond that as the white collective looked at the black male and says, he has weapon that can destroy me. He has weapon that can cause me genetic annihilation. So the white brain computer said, I must create weapons that can do same thing. Must create weapon, can do same thing. Must create weapon. So indeed they did create a weapon. And if you look at, here is the lateral view of the male genitalia. Can you all see it?
Absolutely.
I'll ask for a model.
Absolutely.
All right, but look at this. Here's the front view of the male genitalia. Here is the lateral view. Turn the lateral view around 90 degrees and you have that. See, if you turn this around, just turn it. And then what is this but this? That's a gun. Do you see? Can you see that? Oh, wow, they can't see it.
Some models back.
Yes, I need a model. Yes. Does that help? Please. A volunteer. A volunteer. They want a volunteer. Just imagine. Think of the man standing with no clothes on. You see his genitalia. You see two testicles and a phallus. Penis, okay? Now, a side view is like one testicle and phallus, and if you turn it around, you can see that it is the same as the gun. Are you with me? That side needs a model, okay. Now, what does, within the white supremacy system and culture, what do they call the gun? Come on, class, this is a workshop.